I watch anime. What do you know? And I also wanted to review some of that anime. I'll leave timestamps and the score in the description below for anyone who doesn't want any spoilers. Some prerequisites though, I will not review anything that I may have watched over this period that came out during the previous season, such as Link Click. Also, anything originally from the summer season that spills into the next I won't cover until the next review. So Jahe-sama and Aquatope will have to wait, but that means I can look over To Your Eternity, which I really enjoyed. There were so many interesting things that I thought were done pretty well. Ushi was a Violet or Vivi type character where he doesn't have any range of emotion but goes through life trying to figure it out, whatever it is. What separates him from someone like Vivi or Violet though, is how he goes from absolutely nothing to something. Going from this primordial being to learning words to learning emotions to realizing how easy it is to say something but feel the other. From where it leaves off and how much he's developed so far, it's very compelling to wonder what will happen next and what or how much he'll have to go through in the upcoming seasons. However, the show really tries to connect with the viewer via these relationships built up with characters every few episodes that inevitably lead to some tragic moments. Now, anime doesn't really make me cry, but that doesn't mean I can't build up a connection with characters, and some were done pretty well, and others were alright. The level of impact for each character can be ranked pretty easily from my point of view. Puran stuck with Fushi the whole way, so her decay into old age, which I've seen just a glimpse of myself, had the most impact on him and therefore me. Gugu also established a little place in my heart due to a well done build up and a heroic death, but since it wasn't for as much time, Puran still wins it out for me. As for the rest, they either felt too quick for me to really be connected to, or I just didn't know them at all. I didn't know these people's names until after they died, and even now I don't remember what they are. So the main attraction to the show seems like it needs some consistency for me to praise it more. The soundtrack was quite stunning, probably the best this season and maybe just the year overall. Pink Blood is pleasant to listen to and every song added to each scene. The animation ranged from anywhere from, oh wow, this could be really good, to yeah, it might need some polishing. Especially towards the latter half of the season where it seemed like more and more action would be replaced with stills. Overall, I think I'll give this a 7 out of 10. Seems a bit premature to give this any higher, but I do think with time it'll develop into something much greater, since this is only halfway through the first of 3 arcs if I'm correct, and definitely seems like a series that can only get better with time. Let's hope I'm right. Bokutachi no Remake was pretty meh. The show had a fairly decent hook. The first episode was 50 minutes long and it was able to capture my attention the whole time somehow, but I think it just went downhill after that. Second episode involved one of his friends that had some very forced drama. To give insight, the whole episode was about a project which was a 3-minute video that had to demonstrate the passage of time. First idea to pop in the main character's head was a story about a girl who would age each time a train passed over her. I thought this was a fairly standard idea considering this is what I first thought of when I heard the project. Have a person age each time the person is hidden from view of the camera. When the friend first heard this though, he had to confront the MC because it was apparently scary how similar their ideas were. Now, unless I'm like high IQ, I really don't think this is such a unique idea. Another group even uses the train station to shoot their video as well. It just created some really unnatural tension. Then he also got mad for ever suggesting that they should cut some of the film to get a passing grade on it, which I thought was just stupid. It reminded me of a little point of conflict in Blue Period about exam art. Also, please read Blue Period, it's amazing. Or watch it since it's coming out next season. It's been a while, so I may not remember everything, but basically, I recall one of the main character's friends, Takahashi, was upset that he was being taught exam art, not real art. The main character, Yaguchi, heard this and worried that what he was learning wasn't actually helping express himself to make better art, but rather something more performative that helps him make it past the entrance exams. The conflict was resolved basically because A, no one was mad at each other, but rather the system that encourages the practice of exam art. Granted, they were solo projects, so it's slightly different. And B, because Yaguchi learned that some of the skills he learned, even if they were supposedly for exam art, could still be applied to actual art. So basically what I'm saying is, I think he shouldn't have gotten mad at the character for suggesting a reasonable idea. Trimming down unnecessary parts is a skill that is fairly useful, and one that I could look into considering that last rant. And even if you really wanted it the way it was, I don't think getting angry at your partner was the best option. Just bring it up with a teacher. Anyways, then there's the singing arc, which was whatever, and there was one episode about Midway that was really funny for 2 reasons. First, because seeing people in the 2000s react to ecchi stuff was relatively funny, And what was even funnier was seeing the show make fun of the ecchi stuff when it was literally doing the exact same thing with no hint of irony. I was crying. There was a twist towards the latter half of the show that had it go in a bit more of an interesting direction, but I don't think it was really enough to salvage it. Although by that time I was kind of on airplane mode. I don't think I'd watch a second season 5 out of 10. Oh, yeah, I technically watched this show. I definitely went into it with some expectations considering it looked like an enjoyable show and the marketing made it seem decent, but it just fell so flat. You think it's going to be a familiar type of detective show with sub-arcs about neat little mysteries with one overarching arc about how the detective died. But instead, it's about ear monsters, romance, idols, werewolves, mechas, and what I can only describe as BBC Sherlock syndrome. None of it just flows. I don't know why there were so many ideas just shoved into a show without any sense of building it into the world. Not to mention, the characters aren't interesting at all. The main couple doesn't have any chemistry, the dialogue is boring. I wasn't invested in any of the mysteries since they were fairly short and solved with either wild logic that required leaps in the imagination to fully believe or just bullshit. There were some nice sakuga every so often, but that was about it. Would not watch a second season. 3 out of 10. Vanitas no Carte was a fun show. I definitely think Vanitas carried it for the most part. He was such a charming person to watch. He has this messy blue design that I think is really enticing. This boisterous outward personality he takes with everyone while being a bit edgy or annoyed with Noe, or the over-the-top laugh that fills a room while seducing vampires made him just the best character to watch this season. The rest was alright. The setting and animation in general had a very clean aesthetic to it. The voice acting was good, especially Vanitas, and the soundtrack fit well with the theme. To be honest, I don't have much to say about this. I don't think it was anything too special, but it was an entertaining watch for sure. I would say you'll like this show about as much as you think you'll like this show. I thought it would be kind of decent, and it was decent. I would watch the second part, or season, whatever it is, which has been announced. 7 out of 10. I found Kanojo mo Kanojo, unironically, really funny. To put this in perspective for everyone, this along with Sonny Boy and Vanitas were probably the shows I was most excited to watch every week. I tend to like cringe comedy and anime for some reason. Stuff like Mob Psycho and One Punch Man, while I enjoyed them, I did not find that funny. This, on the other hand, is probably the hardest I've laughed since Kaguya-sama. The voice acting was good for what they were going for, the animation wasn't anything special, but felt very clean, especially the character designs. The over-the-top music to go along with it added just so much more to the ridiculous drama, along with this decrease in ratio that they would have sometimes, just to make it seem all the more dramatic, even though it really wasn't. Noyo was incredibly dumb but blunt and direct, which I thought made for some really hilarious moments. The girls were not only cute and likable, but Milka had development, and it felt like she had reason to actually like Noyo, which I was not expecting. It was just a fun experience to watch. I wouldn't go into the show if you want a nice romance. It feels like a parody of harems, although it's definitely still a harem. I found it funny and would definitely watch a second season. 7 out of 10. The Idaten Deities was pretty alright. I didn't go into expecting much, but got a little out of it. The opening is absolutely mesmerizing. It definitely can't be explained with words. There's shapes, color, animation happening. It's just crazy. Please go watch it. I never skipped it once whenever I watched the show. The ending was also pretty neat. As for the actual show, it felt a bit boring. The animation was good. I mean, it's Mappa, so that's kind of a given. Plus, the style was unique, which did give it some more flavor, but the content of the show did not feel done in an interesting way. 90% of the characters felt like these vessels of exposition that would always be delivered in a very mundane manner. For instance, a good chunk of the middle is training and watching movements while building the world a bit. While it wasn't bad or unimportant, it did take my interest out of some of the characters and the show in general. Also, I think the sped up dialogue is a huge testament to just how tell don't show it could be sometimes. While it's definitely not a show that's been done before, considering some of the touchy material and distinct style of the writer, I just don't think it was as gripping as it could have been. I'm gonna be honest, I'm focusing more on how it was done rather than the lore/world because I don't remember much of anything of the lore/world besides like a few things. What I do remember were the things that were shown to me. When Hayato controlled his weight to pack more of a punch, or the melding of personalities that occurs when an Idaten is born between the person who sent out the prayer and the Idaten themselves, I remembered because they were shown to me. As for the rest, I would definitely have to go back to refresh my memory. In summation, it was a cool idea executed in an alright fashion. I think I might watch a second season. 6 out of 10. I think I would have to watch Sonny Boy again to give a more accurate review or dissection of the show. The only problem with really abstract or symbolic shows like this is that whenever I stop to think about what something could mean or represent or how it's connected to the rest of the show, I'll always end up missing some piece of dialogue that could probably help my interpretation. So I end up being perpetually confused unless I rewatch it, and even then I'd probably still have to rewatch it more than once to get the full picture. Like, there's a story about a monkey who played the role of an empire, and since he stuck to the rules instead of going along with the performance, he was torn apart by the audience. I think I got the general message of that, but there was probably more to it that I just didn't catch. Besides that though, it felt really well done. All these active symbols were fun to think about, even if I was wrong in what I thought it meant. In fact, I believe I may have caught around half the symbolism in the show and correctly interpreted it maybe about 10% of the time, which means I correctly interpreted about 5% of the show. And do I remember what those interpretations were? No. So although I definitely felt both smooth-brained and the most intellectual person while watching the show, it would always be intriguing to think of what anything could have meant or just to watch what was happening. The show is really hard to analyze or review just due to the sheer amount of creativity that went into it. It reminded me of the first time I watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things. After the first time, you sort of get the gist of what was happening in the movie, but you definitely need to watch it again in order to get a full understanding or appreciation of the movie. I highly recommend this to anyone who wants to think about what the fuck they just watched, because it was an experience I don't think I'll obtain with anything else. I'll give this an 8 out of 10 for now, but I think if I were to go back and really delve into it, the score would only go up. Also, the ending is pretty catchy. I actually didn't plan to watch Kageki Shoujo. I glanced at it on Mal and didn't think much of it until I saw some posts on Reddit about how great it was, and I thought, why not? I'm a huge sucker for the whole acting / entertainment focus for some reason, so a show that centers around girls in a theatrical environment really appeals to me. Not only that, but the girls themselves went through some traumatizing or life-changing experiences that aren't talked about much in anime. Their personalities varied and their interactions came off as pretty natural, which tends to be an issue in my eyes when looking at romance / drama type shows. I think my biggest criticism would have to be how every problem is one and done. Although towards the latter half of the show, all the issues aren't as related to mental health or these chronic issues that I think would need a lasting solution to overcome. If I take the first arc with Ai as an example, it's clearly a well done illustration of a kid's experience with sexual assault. She's in a fairly rough position before it happened due to her fairly oblivious and money-eyed mother. So when the assault occurred, it's heartbreaking to see the anxiety of a child as they not only try to wrap their mind around what just happened, but also wrap tape or bandages or something around her stomach, which was an interesting detail. It might seem a bit silly at first, but children as young as her probably aren't educated about anything related to sex. So their minds will leap and conclusions will be drawn in their frantic state. It's all very well expressed and portrayed until after the problem is resolved. See, she had a fairly traumatic reaction to men prior to the resolution, and I don't think that one positive experience would just wipe this internal bias ingrained in her so easily. But it's not really brought up much after it's done. Granted, she doesn't interact with that many men after said episode, but when she does, I do find it a bit odd. This could also be applied to the anorexic girl. From my limited interactions with people who've had eating disorders, it's definitely not something that can just go away by saying something nice. Although maybe it's a bit different considering my interaction was with people who had an internal insecurity drive them rather than an external influence, specifically this teacher. Which I need to rant about this bitch, okay? She's the absolute worst dumb fuck teacher. She's the lowest of low, okay? So basically she called her fat and told her to lose weight, and her justification for calling her fat was that she needed to become strong now or else she would struggle more in the future, so if she can't handle it now, she just has some sort of lack of resolve. Now, I don't disagree with the idea that you need to have this ideal figure to make it into the entertainment industry. I mean, Hollywood stars dehydrate themselves for over 24 hours just to look good on camera for a few minutes. And it was probably a good idea to let her know now that she would have to lose weight rather than later, but calling a 16-year-old fat and telling her to lose weight with absolutely no advice on how to go about it is wildly irresponsible. I can't imagine what would be going on in her head after she said that. Like, ah yes, now that I've called her fatty, she will either continue to gain weight and drop out, or she'll take time out of her already busy schedule to research the most nutritious and balanced diets while figuring out how to fit out a workout routine into her week. Even though she's probably never done this before, there's absolutely no reason that she would choose an unhealthy manner of thinking and force herself to regurgitate already consumed food just because it's the quickest and easiest option available. That's irrational, and teenagers never do anything irrational. What the fuck? Why is she making herself vomit? So no, she wasn't trying to make her stronger, she was just being an ass, and it's possible that's what the show was going for, but it definitely presented it as if she was justified or there was nothing even wrong in what she said, and there definitely was. Despite my criticisms, I truly did like the show, and I hope it gets a second season. 7 out of 10. I should probably tack on the ending was kind of a vibe too. The last up on the list is Words Bubble Up Like Soda Pop, which I really enjoyed. It's directed by the same person who made Your Lie in April, so if you like that, you'd probably enjoy this. The first notable aspect of the film is by far the animation. Color palette and fluid nature of how the characters bounce around really give the film some character. I mean, look at one of the opening shots, or the chase scene in the mall, or even just how Smile moves. There are also some shots that I think are really well done, like when Smile is looking back at her teeth and she just looks at every corner, judging it. The main dynamic between the two characters is really cute. I thought it captured the teen angst and awkwardness, although I wish there was more of it. After the two start talking, there's a brief montage where the relationship supposedly builds more, but I wish I could have actually seen the dialogue or events between them to give them more chemistry and add some overall impact to the film, especially considering it's just under an hour and a half. I mean, there isn't really even a scene where they introduce themselves to each other unless you count the accidental FaceTime. There were also some cliches like how they bumped into each other or Cherry getting cut off every time he's about to mention he's moving. The characters involved are enjoyable, and I would recommend this to anyone who wants something fluffy to watch for an afternoon. For the score, I keep bouncing around a 7 and an 8, so my real score would be closer to a 7.5, but since I really enjoyed it, I'll give it an 8. And that's it for this season. I didn't watch everything, but I think I watched a good chunk. Next season is going to be wild though. Here's a list of what I think I'll be watching. I'm not going to watch everything weekly, specifically these two, because I think I'd enjoy binging them more than just watching them weekly. I'm not sure how many I'll review because I don't know how many of them spill over. I believe Demon Slayer and Osama do spill over, but as for the rest, I could not say. Also, if there's anything else I should watch, let me know in the description, because even if the season is stacked, if there's something good, I want to watch it. Paladin looked like it could be interesting, or Deep Insanity, Visual Prison, I'm just not sure. I don't know enough about them. Leave a comment with what you think the underrated gem of the season will be, and subscribe if you want to see more. Otherwise, I'm gonna get back to talking with this mega rich light bending guy. See ya.